our research has found that there's been a stark rise in what we call lost learning, in particular that suspensions and exclusions have increased by over 20%. And as mentioned in that segment before, we understand lost learning in a much more broader, holistic way. So 32 million days of school learning has been lost due to students not being in class with things like internal truancy and persistent absence. I think there are lots of different things in the research that we've done that have been incredibly shocking and upsetting. I think in particular that this is actually a racial injustice issue as well. So that the children from some ethnic minority backgrounds, such as Black Caribbean and Romani, Gypsy, Roma and Irish traveller communities are disproportionately being excluded. And many of those students themselves that we outlined in the report have actually expressed that they experience racism at school, and that impacts their feeling of belonging and safety in school, and essentially disincentivize them to show up and engage in their school career. But also, this is an incredibly costly problem. We did some new analysis in this report that shows that there is 1.6 billion cost to the state over a lifetime for just a single cohort of permanently excluded students. And that's because many of those students may end up having contact with the criminal justice system at some points in their life, or struggle with underemployment or unemployment throughout their lives.
So it's not just the cost of their lost personal learning, it's the cost to society as well over the course of their lifetimes. What is it stopping these kids getting the right support? They're kids, they make mistakes, we all do. What is it stopping them getting back on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, what we do know is that children that are in the most need of support actually have access to the least amount of resources to support them in their school career. So, for example, poorer children are twice as likely to be in alternative provision school than in an expensive special school that's paid for, but it's not run by the state. So the funding that they might receive from their local council would be less than a third than what students who attend a more expensive special school may receive. So mainstream schools are essentially struggling to provide the kind of support that these children need to kind of catch up and stay on track, in particular in this post-pandemic year where a lot of children are still having to kind of catch up with their education. So there's lots of opportunities for kind of earlier intervention that are essentially missed, identifying need when it comes to special educational needs, identifying needs when it comes to mental health crisis. A lot of these are lost, and then these problems become more acute and they escalate and often result in being sent out of class and sometimes, unfortunately, suspended and excluded.
And of course, when that's happening, that's all time that they're missing in their education, and that they would have to, effectively catch up in their own spare time. How big an impact has COVID had on this, do you think?
Well, I think what we do know is before the pandemic, a lot of these trends, they're parallel trends to what we could see. So we could see there was a rise in special educational needs prior to 2020. And similarly, there was a mental health crisis among young people in this country much prior to 2020. But what we can see now is that has increased significantly. And there's also, when we talk about education in this report, we're also talking about the kind of social education and kind of developing relationships with your peers. And that time spent away from being in person and in school and being able to develop those softer skills with communication and teamwork that are all part of being in the classroom have been missed. And we can definitely see that we're still kind of living in the legacy of COVID in schools across the nation.
How do you think we can reverse this trend?
I mean, there are lots of things that are actually already happening to kind of get to grip with some of the challenges presented in this report. So ensuring, for example, local authorities are paying attention to the registers in schools and which children are on school rolls. I think there needs to be more attention to be paid to things like youth hubs to address violence. I think the government's introduction of free breakfast clubs in primary schools is brilliant, but I think we still need to respond to the way that there has been a change in the relationships between schools and families in the post-pandemic world. I think we also need to really pay attention to the sheer rise in vulnerability and additional needs, and that includes the rise in child poverty, the rise in special educational needs and mental health, as I've mentioned. But I think also mainstream schools, need to be better supported to support. Well, they need to be equipped to support children with those wide range of needs. It's not enough for us to just ask schools to take a different approach to improving inclusivity if they don't have the time or the capacity to do so.
Efua Poku-Amanfo, one of the authors of that IPPR report. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.